Hi, this is Matthew Robert Payne, and this is chapter 32 of a comprehensive prophet's manual. And this is a chapter called Ministering in the Prophetic. The chapter is called Ministering in the Prophetic, not Ministering in the Pathetic. And some people who are undisciplined uh, and don't follow proper professional prophetic etiquette can make the whole subject of the prophetic something pathetic. We're living in times where there's many training schools and people that can learn to prophesy and get practice in prophesying, and uh, many of them think because they've been told that they're called to be a prophet, that they think that because they've got the gift of prophecy and they're prophesying correctly, that they're actually a prophet now, and people get carried away. And because of lack of teaching, lack of good teaching, they actually assume that they're a prophet and they call themselves a prophet. Just recently, I had a girl that was writing to me, uh, coming into the realization that she's called to be a prophet. And I was trying to tell her to hold on. It'll take 10 or 15 years before she's in the office of prophet. And she was asking me, could I ordain her? And so there's a lot of immaturity when it comes to the prophetic. Uh, Ministering in the prophetic is something that grows with time, and your ability grows in time. Just like I'd imagine you could have a 5-year-old boy play tennis, and he could uh, hit the tennis racket and hit balls over the net and play a pretty good game at the age of 5, but you don't see him before he's 18 at Wimbledon. And uh, it's it's a long, hard road between the age of 5 and 18 when he plays at Wimbledon, or 20 when he plays at Wimbledon, and he would have hit millions of balls over the nets. And the same is true for the prophetic gifting and ministering in the prophetic. You get your accuracy and your confidence from doing thousands of prophecies, multiple thousands. I estimate that I've done about 30,000 prophecies so far in my life, and there's other people who minister in the prophetic that I feel are so much better than me, and who've got a more comprehensive gift. And yet, there's people who write to me and say that the prophecy they've got off me was the best prophecy they've ever had in their life. And these are people who seek out prophets and people who've had many prophecies in their life, which is good feedback to have. So, as I've shared so far in the book, ministering in the prophetic is a real privilege to do. A person I minister on a prophetic website where I earn money to publish my books, and I ask people for a donation of 30 Australian dollars for a prophecy, and um, I feel that it's warranted because I am earning money to publish books. So I say in my reason for asking for finances is that a person's partnering with me to publish books. But I minister the prophetic off a website, and I do prophecies via email to people and do video prophecies that they can see on YouTube and watch on YouTube. And it's a real privilege to minister to total strangers that write to me and give a donation to me. But apart from my website, um, I'm used often, like I've already shared, giving prophetic words to strangers on the streets of my city. And I've done tens of thousands of prophecies over strangers. And uh, that's really encouraging for people. And so it really depends on what you call ministering the prophetic. Is ministering in the prophetic something you do as a profession? Is it something that's that's your job? You're a traveling prophet, and you're an itinerant prophet that travels from church to church and ministers? Or is ministering in the prophetic just being a simple prophet, a simple person who ministers to people at your church, at your local church, and ministers to people prophetically on the streets as strangers? I can think it can be both. It can be someone who's living a life as an ordained prophet, traveling from church to church, ministering in churches, and it can also be someone who just prophesies to people in the local church and gives corporate words in your church service and ministers to people uh, in the streets in prophetic evangelism. So I'm more of the second type, although I'm hoping to minister in churches soon enough, and I'm doing some work to uh, arrange that in the near future. It's important for you to keep a check on your humility when you're speaking on behalf of God, whether you're uh, giving a person a prophecy face to face on the streets of your city in prophetic evangelism, or you're ministering in a church and you've got a line of people to minister to, and you're ministering to people. Just because you're called to be the prophet, just because you're the visiting speaker in a church and the pastor has given you his pulpit and given you the ability to minister to his people, it's important to walk humbly and be a servant and not be lifted up in pride. Um, you can still minister prophetically whilst acting in pride. You can still activate your prophetic gift and be a really prideful person. You can even minister prophetically and have demonic spirits in your life. But it's helpful to be a person who walks in humility and walks as a servant. You remember that Jesus, on the day that he was betrayed, uh, took even Judas's feet and washed their feet. And uh, he may have washed the disciples' feet after Judas left. I'm not too sure of that timeline. But Jesus, even on the day he was betrayed, washed his disciples' feet. And Paul was a servant of all, and he said that he was a servant. He said multiple times that he was a bond slave, and that's the same as a slave who decides to work for free for his master and be a slave for the rest of their life instead of being released after 7 years. And Paul said he'd found a new master and he wanted to work for free for that master, and so he called himself a bond slave. And that's who we are to Christ. We're meant to be Jesus' hands and feet. We're meant to walk out and minister His gospel with people. And when people need compassion, we're meant to bring the compassion. When people need finances, we're meant to bring the finances. When people need a loving, encouraging word from the Lord that will be like water to a dying person, we're meant to bring that word and be a refreshing voice in a person's life. So whether you're a person who is just new to the prophetic and ministering on prophetic Facebook groups and practicing your gift and sharpening your gift with many prophetic words, or you're a person who has got your own internet site and charges for prophecies and is learning to minister to people through that way, or whether you're a person who's got speaking engagements and traveling and has become a seasoned prophet, ministering, it doesn't matter what type of prophet you've become or what type of prophet you are. Ministering as a prophet uh, ministering to the Lord, and we're to love God and love our fellow neighbor, and they're the two commands, the greatest commandments: to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And we're to keep those in focus. That the way that we love God is not only with worship and praise and obedience, but one way that we can love God is love our human beings, our fellow human beings. And so ministering the prophetic is simply being love in action and going from person to person and sharing love and sharing uh, the uh, the precious life-giving words of Jesus with people who are hungry, people who are thirsty, people who need some refreshing. And you can be sure, just as Jesus gave me his presence before I did the last video, before I did the last chapter, uh, just as sure as Jesus came through and refreshed me with the presence of God, you can be sure that when Jesus wants to use you to give someone a prophetic word, that he'll give you the words to say, he'll give you the words to share with a person. So you can be confident that even though there's warfare in the prophetic and you're going to experience warfare as you start to minister to people and bless people, just be rest assured, just be confident that Jesus is going to have your back, and Jesus is going to co-labor with you, and together you're going to bring in a harvest for the kingdom. So in the words of Galatians, don't weary in doing good, don't grow weary in doing good, for in due time your harvest will come. And if you're a person who's unrecognized and unknown and not loved and accepted for your gift, just have patience and be sure that Jesus does love you. And even if you're just ministering a little bit or you're ministering a lot, the love of God is shed abroad for you, and he loves you for who you are, and he wants to draw you to himself. So I hope you're encouraged by that.